All right, it's Friday morning, thank God. Of course, I'm running late, as always. I run late behind for everything, man. So don't just think it's you guys. If you're trying to get a hold of me for something and I'm running late, it's not just you. It's nothing personal. Very busy this time of the year. Got all this groundskeeping to do, and things are blooming and growing, and have a bee's nest to remove, and lots and lots of stuff, and lots of, basically my whole back of the yard out there, the yard is woods. So, the front has to look decent and presentable because the house is too close to the street. But yet the back, even though it's hugely woods, guess what? When you go up into the middle of it, it's a huge open area where, and it's very, sizable, where the sun can come through and everything will grow right there, even though you're in the woods. So it's like I have to mow the woods, which doesn't seem right. But if I don't want a bunch of snakes and ticks and shit out there, that's what I got to do. Anyway, on to what's relevant and topical at the moment, or at least I think it is. Just wanted to talk about, and yeah, I'm just going to talk about something now. There are going to be training videos this weekend. Whole bunch of different stuff. I'm into that gear now, so stay with me, hang in there. But some of these things are important too, I guess. Lately it seems popular, Collie Muscle just had hernia surgery, umbilical hernia surgery. So now you got all these people who are making videos and saying that the guy had the hernia surgery because growth hormone. Growth hormone's causing bodybuilders to have hernias now. All of a sudden, bodybuilders have hernias and it's growth hormone. But there's no really big people with any muscle saying this, right? Isn't that curious enough that it's always that way? I know that people want to be an authority on something, so they want to chime in, and they have every right in the world, but what is happening to men in our society today? I don't know. But these people that are chiming in with all this, these poor uneducated folks that don't really know anything about what they're talking about. To people that know, when they see you do that, you look like 24 karat stupid. So, for God's sake, get some basal level of education before you come off and state something factually. You can give your opinion, but if you're going to come on here factually and tell all the other little fellas that are following you, however many there are or are not, that now this is another side effect of growth hormone and or insulin, and it's causing bodybuilders to have hernias. Guess what? Bodybuilders have been having hernias, and powerlifters also, more so powerlifters, forever. Forever. People have been having hernias ever since they strained to move something or lift something, weights or anything else. And that, the guts are getting big and pushing out and spreading the muscles in the stomach, and this is causing hernias. No, that's not what's causing umbilical hernias. Do you see where the hernias are? Okay, anything near where the umbilical cord was, right, where your navel is, that's a weak spot. That's the most likely weak spot. If there's going to be a weak spot that's weak enough for you to get a hernia, that's the most likely area, is near that belly button. Well, why would that be? Well, because there was a frigging hole there and it was tied off. There's no muscle over top of that. Just your inner abdominal lining, the sheath. And when you look at abs, right, the reason that you can see all the delineation between the muscles is because there is a place that is in between the muscles. So when you lift something in strain, such as a deadlift is ideal, or a really heavy bent over row, the internal pressure is really, really high. And between the muscles, it's easy, not easy, but that's the most likely place where something's going to pop. That pressure, it pushes a bubble out. It pops through the abdominal sheath, the lining there, in between the muscles. It's not that the muscles are being pushed out and tearing yourself apart. And I guess the pressure could probably move the muscles too, I guess. I don't know. But I do know what causes umbilical hernias. I've had one. right above my navel. For a long time I had it. I had it for years before I had anything done about it. And when I got it, I was a natural. Imagine that. I had that thing for many, many years. And I got it from doing heavy deadlifts with no belt. Brian Westen, former longtime training partner and friend of mine. You're probably not familiar with the name unless you've been around a while. And then you would realize that he was a very renowned world record holding powerlifter multiple times back in his day, which really wasn't that long ago to me, but it was probably a really long time ago to some of you. And there's a video on the internet, you can Google, of him deadlifting 740 in competition, good lift, with no belt. He never wore a belt. And I used to say, man, aren't you afraid to get in a hernia? Because so many of us in our circle had them and had to have them repaired. And he never had a problem, and we always thought, it's amazing he can pull that much weight. You see, the belt, if you're wearing a belt to protect your back, then maybe you have some kind of an injury or something like that that you're working with on your back, or for some reason it's just more prone to an injury than a person with a really good, solid, healthy back. But if none of those things are true and you're wearing a belt to protect your back, you need to strengthen your back. You need to strengthen your back. If you ask most powerlifters, why do they wear a belt when they lift? It's to keep from blowing their guts out. It's to keep from blowing their fucking stomachs apart from the internal pressure that builds when you strain and pull something really, really heavy. Ask. Don't take my word for it. So a lot of guys don't wear belts, and I was one of those guys that never wore a belt, and I pulled a lot of weight, and I squatted a lot of weight, and in my day, because now you got to understand the circle of friends, close personal friends I had. Jeff McVicker, Brian Westen, Bobby Fields, Gene Richlack. Are you seeing a common thread there? All world record holding powerlifters, big guys, very, very, very strong guys. Yeah. Now, did I keep up with these guys? No. But I never wore a shirt. I never wore any of that. Never wore a shirt. I was always raw, raw, raw. But even when I was huge, even when I was, anywhere near 300 pounds or 300 pounds, I, back at the height of my heyday, my lifts were extremely respectable for a bodybuilder that size. I was one of the stronger bodybuilders of that size. So I was moving a shitload of weight too. And those guys are what encouraged me or motivated me to train that way. And that's why I train with all those guys. I didn't hang with them everything that they did, because their training was much more specific, for their sport and what they were doing than what I was doing. But there was a lot of crossover. And really, that's what got me so huge. Part of it was training that way. I was very, very thick back then, very dense. And there's video to show that. There's lots of pictures to show that. There's the little avatar at the top of this channel to show that. But yeah, a lot of guys in the circle had hernias. And guess what? Eventually, Brian Westen got a hernia too. Looked like a little alien trying to pop out of his stomach. Where was it? Right above his navel, in between the abs. Yep. And I don't know if he ever got it fixed. But that's what most people wear belts for. Most people that lift heavy weights, they're wearing that belt not to protect their back. They're wearing that belt to protect their abs and their stomachs and to keep from blowing shit apart. That's why they wear the belt. So dudes that don't wear belts lift really heavy. I know that Blaha, he's the one lift that he can lift some weight in is a deadlift. He's got like a 500 or 600 pound deadlift, which I know he thinks is a lot of weight. And there's no way to deny it. 600 pounds is some sincere weight. I think probably anything over 550 when you're pulling from the floor, it's probably pretty heavy, for most people. I'm not saying it's heavy for me. Today, I wouldn't even attempt it, so probably couldn't do it today. But I wouldn't try it because I'm just too old. And with no GH, no growth hormone, because I don't make it anymore like I used to, I would be, very susceptible to injury, I believe. So I can't take the injury back if it occurs, and I've had enough to know that, but I can avoid it from the start. I can do everything to avoid it. So me going back and trying to reproduce some of my heaviest lifts would be ridiculously stupid and serve no purpose. I can't be as dense as I was by any means without that heavy, heavy-ass weight. But with the volume shit and stuff, you know, high volume, I can still maintain pretty decent size pretty easily. But I'm not going to be as dense. But there, Mr. Blaha there, he can keep pulling all he wants without a belt, and that's cool. I used to think it was a way to go too. But he is opening himself up to the possibility of a hernia. And now in his older age, if he continues to do it, continues to do it, continues to do it, I would say the odds are very likely that he's going to have some kind of problem like that, especially if he starts pulling more weight. Yeah. Now, who else do we know that's got hernias? Oh, Carl McGee, Chip. Another one of my old training partners. Very strong guy in his day, competitive bodybuilder. You know, he had umbilical hernia, which he had repaired, same as all of us, right above the navel. He's never used GH. He had it repaired, and this was many years ago. And then lately now, he had some stomach issues, which he wasn't sure what it was. It turned out to be that he had a couple other tears in the lining up higher. And he had to have it all repaired. And they were probably because he hadn't trained for a while, because he stopped training finally. You know, busy raising a young child now, and has a fairly new wife. And he's pretty busy. So I think that's probably what made it, exacerbated it, is the falling off of conditioning. You know, because Carl was one of these guys that always had abs, and he never had any problem with these tears up there, but apparently they were very old. And probably would never have caused a problem if he had continued to train, you know, unless he was training super heavy. And I don't think that he wasn't one of those guys that was ever reckless. Pretty much when he trained super heavy was when we trained together, and that was when I was a lot younger, so there's no chance of that today. But that growth hormone and insulin are causing bodybuilders to have hernias. That's absolutely ridiculous. I would say you have more powerlifters, more strength athletes that develop hernias than you do bodybuilders overall. And just ask any of them why they wear a belt. You know, not the guys that don't know, but the guys that are really pulling sincere weight. Yeah, what they're worried about, what the belt does. Does it support their back? Yeah, it's going to give you a little bit of support. But the main reason is to keep from blowing your guts apart. That's the main reason most people moving weight wear belts. The GH thing, I think when I got my hernia, not only was I still a natural, but guess what, kiddies? It was before you could even get GH. I know, mind blower, isn't it? Isn't it like poof? Oh, it's always been around. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. No, and when it was the initial GH that they came out with, it was, and I remember then, I was around, it wasn't that long ago, and it was, they came up with it from cadavers, from the pituitary glands of cadavers, and it caused all kind of infections. It was real, it wasn't synthetic, and it caused all kind of infections and problems, and not in 100% of the people, but in a lot of people, and no bodybuilders used it. Nobody used it because the shit was so phenomenally expensive. Even when they first synthesized it, and that first came out, it was so expensive, nobody could afford it. You think it's expensive now? It's nothing now. It's nickels and dimes now compared to what it cost. It was tens of thousands of dollars a month when it first came out, if you thought you were going to do it. And nobody knew what the hell it was. Nobody knew what it was. There was a time before bodybuilders used growth, and there was a time before bodybuilders used insulin. There was a time before the internet. Yeah. And I've known lots of guys with lots of hernias over the years, and that's why they got them. So just a little tidbit of factual information. Believe what you want to believe.